Hi guys, it's Robert Moore here, the ITV News Washington correspondent. I don't know if you happen to catch it in your busy lives, but I just did a little 25-minute documentary on Ohio and Donald Trump, kind of branded as Trump's America. Will it happen? It was an attempt to try and look at a key battleground state in the United States and figure out where Trump's support really comes from, what kind of motivates it. So if you've got any questions about that, about the whole Trump phenomenon, his chances of victory, what you thought of my program, the good, the bad and the ugly is all fine, of course, then let me know and join this little Facebook Live and we can have a little chat about it for 10, maybe 15 minutes. Obviously Trump's a pretty kind of provocative subject. Here we find it unbelievably divisive. I mean, I've been to dinner parties and friends' houses where they are talking about it in such bitter terms that the host or hostess has to just end the conversation. It's a really polarizing subject that we witnessed in Ohio, but you can witness really in any part of America if you come over here and talk to people. So if you have any questions, fire in and let me know thoughts, views, comments.
So our first question from Adam Blair is, could Trump really become president or will his mouth get in the way?
Excellent question, Adam. Perceptive questioner as always. Yes, I think, look, undoubtedly we're 4 weeks away from Election Day. There are two candidates. Either of them at this stage have a reasonable chance of becoming president of the United States, and perhaps most ominously, if you're a Trump or Hillary hater, is they have the chance of becoming commander-in-chief and being running the world's greatest nuclear arsenal as well. So, look, it's alarming for some. Either way, whichever way this election goes, both have a significant shot at it because there could be any range of events that changes it. Obviously, we've got two more presidential debates to go. One on this Sunday night from Missouri. We've got the possibility of kind of the so-called famous October surprise when some external or domestic event happens that could change the dynamic of the race. There could be a terrorist attack, God forbid, which might potentially favour Donald Trump as kind of the so-called strongman. There could be a kind of some bad economic news that could help him against the sort of status quo candidate. Or there could be, just a blunder on the campaign trail. So anything could happen. I think it's going to be surprisingly close. Who knows if the polls are accurate? They have Hillary Clinton up a little bit at the moment, but not by a significant margin. So definitely either candidate has a shot at becoming president.
Do you think, question from Jim Davis, do you think Trump will do a U-turn on his policies if he's elected?
Look, I think, Jim, we're going to see and hear a gigantic screech of multiple U-turns because, I mean, you can have a view about immigration in the United States, and obviously that also is a divisive view, but I don't know anybody, and literally nobody in the world of sort of policy expertise, construction work, or anything like that, who believes, for example, his signature issue of building a wall is a serious or practical matter. So it seems inconceivable that we're going to wake up in 4 years' time and there's going to be a gigantic kind of wall all across that 2,000-mile Mexican-US frontier. So if that's his signature issue and it's widely derided as totally impractical, then there has to be a kind of massive U-turn on that issue alone. And of course, there are many other issues on which he may have to confront reality and change his mind. But if you just look at that one, the Mexican wall, there is no engineer in America and almost no kind of policy expert who thinks that is practical. So the idea of America building a kind of Great Wall of China on its southern border would seem absurd and would be a good example, just one of many that he's going to have to do a U-turn on.
One of our viewers asked, do you think that Hurricane Matthew could be the October surprise?
Interesting question. I mean, look, it's certainly a surprise because it's late in the hurricane season, so it qualifies in those narrow terms. But I guess when we talk about October surprises, we talk about whether it has a chance of changing the kind of political dynamic of this election campaign. It's not clear to me who is helped by a hurricane. I mean, unless it's hopelessly handled by the White House, like Hurricane Katrina was by the George W. White House. It's unlikely, it seems to me, to have much of a political impact. In fact, maybe it would help President Obama because he can be seen to be proactive. He can go down and visit it. Undoubtedly, both if there is a lot of destruction, both candidates will go and kind of be seen to be shaking hands and viewing the wreckage of Hurricane Matthew. So I can't see it having a political impact. So it's a surprise in the, how can we put it, in the meteorological sense, but I don't think in any meaningful political way.
Robert Elliott's made more of a statement. He thinks he's going to be a great president because of his phenomenal business brain.
Sure. Look, I mean, there is that view. I was in Ohio for this ITV Tonight program. Undoubtedly, one of the great appeals of Donald Trump to Americans is, look, this isn't a country that's even meant to be run by professional politicians. You know, this is a country where the idea of an outsider as leader is very appealing, and so the idea of a businessman taking charge for a country that prides itself on being the home of capitalism and free enterprise, that is very appealing. And we came across many Trump supporters who said, look, above all else, their reason for backing Trump is their loathing, their contempt, their hatred of the professional political class. They think Washington, D.C. is a train wreck that lets down the country. So they love the idea of a businessman from outside who's going to kind of clean house here in Washington. That is undoubtedly his appeal, but obviously there is a separate argument about whether he is truly a great businessman. Many people saying, look, he is rich but not a great businessman in terms of how he has handled his employees or many of his kind of contractors as well. So that's a debate that rages between Republicans and Democrats.
A lot of comments on here calling Hillary Clinton corrupt and mention a few things about her emails. Do you think this will have an effect on Trump, help propel him to the White House?
Yeah, look, good question. I mean, look, it's a binary choice, this, isn't it? There's only, well, I guess there are 4 choices running. You know, there's a Libertarian and a Green Party candidate as well, but there's only 2 candidates who are going to become President of the United States, Donald J. Trump and Hillary Rodham Clinton. So if that is true, which it is, of course, then it does mean that the high negative ratings for one are certainly going to help the approval rating of the other. So the dislike of Hillary Clinton, this perception that she's corrupt certainly, but also kind of economical with the truth, is evasive, is a little bit too cunning, is a political insider, that view certainly helps Donald Trump. There are many people, we met them up in Ohio where we were shooting this documentary, who just almost can't put their finger on it, but they have a visceral dislike of Hillary Clinton, and that is certainly driving people towards Trump. I mean, you know, Trump has got very high negative ratings too. In fact, these 2 candidates, I think, are setting historic rates in terms of negative polling, but undoubtedly Trump is helped by the fact that Hillary Clinton's unpopular, and there are many Democrats who are thinking, gosh, why didn't Joe Biden run?
Matt Screech asks, do you think it's his style that's helped him win so many voters? He compares it to Farage's technique with the EU.
Yeah, good, really interesting question, that. I mean, I've been to so many Trump rallies, and, you know, on one level you think, goodness me, how is this guy carrying this off? Because he's provocative, he's incendiary, he's politically incorrect. But then, you know, if you talk to people in those crowds, if you talk to Trump supporters, that's precisely what they love. They repeatedly say, look, we don't want somebody who's politically correct. You know, we've had that for a generation, and look at the state of our inner cities, look at the state of our immigration policy, and look at the state of our economy. So they seem to really crave this and yearn for somebody who is, above all else, a political outsider, somebody who is just rejects the kind of the political class of rulers this country has had. So yes, I mean, that is definitely a factor. His kind of the way he talks, his style, the fact that he doesn't kind of conform to conventions, and, you know, is equally happy to kind of reprimand Republicans as he is Democrats. That is a very powerful appeal. I hadn't realized until this kind of election cycle how powerful it was, but above all else, that these Americans want an outsider, somebody who is just going to change the kind of dynamics of how Washington and America are run.
Got another question from Adam Blair. Is this election not about who wins it, but who loses it through gaffes or scandal?
I suppose that's true, Adam. I mean, let's see debates 2 and 3 to decide who makes the greatest gaffe. But it is certainly the case that there could yet be somebody making a blunder of epic proportions. The week of hell from hell that Donald Trump had was that week when he had, well, first of all, refused to release his tax returns, and then they became public through a leak. Well, at least some of the tax returns became public in a leak through the New York Times. I mean, that was seen as kind of capping a disastrous week for Donald Trump. If you look at Syria, for example, I mean, which candidate, it's a humanitarian crisis of our time. Which of the candidates has got a better policy? You have to almost kind of cry into your pillow. Nobody, not Trump, not Hillary Clinton, not even Obama, have a coherent plan to alleviate the humanitarian suffering there, or to try and figure out a solution to the Syrian civil war. So, it is possible that a gaffe or some policy blunder just changes this race just enough to make a difference on November the 8th.
Someone called Machek has an interesting question. Are we not in the new time of voting based on who don't we like rather than who we do like?
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? I mean, that's probably true in British politics, but certainly true here when, as we just mentioned a few minutes ago, both candidates have got these historically high and negative ratings. A lot of people are being driven into one camp because of their dislike of the other candidate. And I think, many others may choose either not to vote at all or to vote for the Libertarian or the Green candidate because they don't want to see either Clinton or Trump in the White House. So it's a dynamic, isn't it, that in this election, that with these high negative ratings, there's really nobody who's captured kind of the public imagination, who is seen as a safe choice, but also a kind of a change from the status quo. So it must make a ton of candidates who didn't quite kind of make the cut lament, because if Ted Cruz had come through, maybe he would be in a stronger position than Donald Trump. If Joe Biden had run, maybe he'd be in a much stronger position than Hillary Clinton. So there must be a ton of candidates saying to themselves, if only I had either competed or at least competed better in the primaries.
Robert Francis asked, do you think Hillary Clinton's superior organisation, as in the campaign,
good question,
could clinch it in a tight race?
Yeah, I think that's true, isn't it? I mean, the analysts, those who really go into the weeds of kind of American politics and particularly it's kind of what they call the ground game here, would certainly give the advantage to Hillary Clinton. They say she's got much better data-driven political organisation on the ground, particularly in those battleground states like Ohio, where I was, but also Florida, and some of the other sort of Midwestern states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. So yes, that's the conventional wisdom, but I don't know, I just asked the question kind of, is this a conventional year, or is something else driving voters this time? Not the kind of ground game, but the kind of their secret dislike of the status quo. Well, are people telling the pollsters one thing, that they're going to vote Hillary Clinton, but then go into the privacy of the voting booth and say, hang on, I just want to kick Washington, D.C., where it hurts most, and pull the lever for, or punch the button for Donald Trump. It's an open question. Are we going to see what you could call the kind of Brexit effect here? The pollsters were wrong-footed badly earlier this summer in Britain. It's possible that will happen here as well, and we just have to wait to see. I guess we'll know kind of late on November the 8th.
Scott Rowland asked a question, maybe what a lot of British people might be asking, is why do some Americans hate Hillary Clinton so much?
It's a good question, isn't it? And unless you live here and talk to the kind of Hillary haters in depth, it isn't obvious because, on one level she was, she's a woman, which is an astonishing achievement in terms of kind of the gender politics that we have. I mean, the first woman president of the United States would seem to be a great achievement. She was a very dogged and impressive in many ways United States Senator for New York. She was a competent and diligent Secretary of State. Sure, she was controversial at the end, particularly over Benghazi. But in everything she's done, she is widely thought by those who worked closely with her to have done a good and competent job. So where does this hatred come from? I suspect it's the fact that she has been such a feature of American public life for 30, even 40 years. First lady, who tried to drive through healthcare reform, a senator from New York, Secretary of State. She's been so buffeted by criticism about, also associated with Bill, that she has become, a symbol of the status quo. So, she really is judged to be a political insider with her network of wealthy sort of fundraisers and so on. So there are just people who associate her with the status quo and the sort of political inside job that they detest. So I think in that area she's really quite unpopular, and you can see that when you look at the kind of details of the polling.
Matt asks, do you think Obama, unlike other previous presidents, could have a massive effect on the outcome of this election?
I think, all surrogates, whether it's, somebody as powerful as President Obama or his wife Michelle, or for Donald Trump, the surrogates that surround him like Chris Christie or Giuliani, they're really marginal. Maybe they affect, a small percentage of turnout in their own home states or amongst communities that they resonate with. So, maybe President Obama can help mobilize the African American vote in a state like North Carolina, but it seems most unlikely that he impacts the actual outcome of the election. So I think it's a marginal impact. I mean, everything matters in a sense because it could be a very close election, but I don't think the surrogates determine the outcome of what's going to happen in just over 4 weeks' time.
Vince Barry asks, how can whoever wins, could they heal that divide if they win the White House that you've witnessed?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that's exactly what we looked at in this Tonight documentary. It's not so much, the traction and for Donald Trump and where it comes from, but the day after the election, where is America going to be at that interesting point? Because a high percentage, or maybe 45% of the population, is going to be aggrieved. That if Hillary wins, there's a reasonable percentage of Americans who think she should be in prison and not in the White House. If Donald Trump wins, there's a reasonable number of Americans who think he should be basically receiving some sort of psychiatric care, not be commander-in-chief. So the views are so kind of polarized here that there will be a question of legitimacy for the next president of the United States. In fact, Donald Trump has alluded to the fact that if Hillary wins, he thinks it'll only be because of the system is crooked. So I think there is a crisis of legitimacy that could be coming down the tracks towards the United States. That's why I'm pretty kind of pessimistic, and in this documentary even spoke about whether it could mark the end of the so-called kind of American century, because this political stability that America has been famed for 100 years could be in doubt, because above all else, win or lose, you need to accept that the President of the United States is your president, and I cannot see that happening in the aftermath of this election and the inauguration in January. I think either the Trump or the Hillary supporters are going to be so aggrieved that they will just see the next president as their enemy, not as their ally, not as their friend, not even really as their commander-in-chief.
Just a closing thought, Robert.
Yeah.
What's your last impression from your trip to Ohio to do the Tonight programme
Yeah.
about the state of the election?
Yeah, it illustrated to me, reinforced for me two things. First of all, that you really need to travel outside of the sort of, what we call here the Beltway, this kind of Washington D.C. bubble, to get a feel of what Americans are thinking. It's to state the obvious, but what they say in the suburbs and in the inner cities of Ohio is not what they're saying on the kind of east coast of the United States. You get a much more powerful sense of how global economic forces, the shutting of factories, the kind of industrial decline that has ravaged the American Rust Belt, how that has helped Donald Trump seize the political agenda. This talk about kind of trade agendas. Over here it kind of feels a bit empty and academic. There it's visceral and really matters. People blame kind of the Obama and Bush trade deals for the loss of their jobs, for the loss of their livelihood. So you really get an insight into why people are agitated and why they're politically frustrated. So it's valuable in that sense. You also underlines just how divided America is. You hear neighbor arguing with neighbor, towns are divided, families are divided. We talk to people who wouldn't even talk to their parents because of the political division in America at the moment. So it underlines how poisonous, how toxic American politics has become, and in that sense, it's a powerful insight. I hope those of you who saw the documentary might have I got that sense. And if you're interested in, we'll try and do some more of these Facebook live forums if you're interested. So, if you like the ITV News Facebook page, then that's great, and we'll talk. It may be interesting, or you may find it a bit dull, but engage if you find it interesting. We've got a heck of an election coming down the road, and we can broadcast on it, but I'm much more interested in your engagement in it too. So thanks for joining us.